Welcome to the Groundhog Day edition of the Infowars Nightly News. It's February 2nd, 2012. Of course, the globalists want us to believe there'll be 6 more cycles in the winter of tyranny, but humanity is waking up. We'll get to that later in the report. Also coming up, Dr. Jerome Corsi will cover a smattering of issues, including an update on the lawsuit challenging Obama's eligibility in the state of Georgia, also money laundering on Wall Street, and a whole lot more. But first in the news, full body scanners at the Super Bowl in 2012. At least that's what was reported earlier in the day. According to WPRInews.com, reporter Matt Touche said despite a congressional demand for an investigation into the machines following health concerns, the scanners will be a part of the security set in Indianapolis this weekend, marking the first time the controversial devices have been used for a public sporting event. However, there's been an update, and Homeland Security and TSA have now tweeted that they will not use body scanners. And this reporter, Matt Touche, has revised his statement where he earlier said Lucas Oil Stadium told him he'd have to go through the body scanners. Now he claims they are, in fact, only metal detectors. Now, given the fact that the TSA has been caught lying about all kinds of different issues, including promises to stop groping children under 12, and that they were going to test the radiation body scanners for their harmful effects, you can't exactly believe them, but as Paul Joseph Watson writes, you can be sure you'll get a full-body pat-down and a groping if you do attend the Super Bowl. And why is the Football League so involved in Homeland Security's measures? Why do they keep saying there's going to be a threat against sports stadiums? And why do all the FEMA continuity of government exercises always involve rounding up the mass of the population into stadiums? Questions for a different time, but we'll keep an eye on that as they have two-faced statements regarding the upcoming Super Bowl set for this Sunday. Meanwhile, with the economic collapse ensuing, survival is, of course, on everyone's mind. Here's what came to one person's mind.
Come with me if you want to live. Come with me if you want to live.
Come with me if you want to live. Of course, we're talking about James Cameron, who is now fleeing the U.S. for New Zealand. Now, on the one hand, he is working on a sequel to Avatar there, but on the other hand, many of the wealthy elites have fled the country with the writing on the wall as far as the economic collapse, the possibility of a bio-terror attack, and a whole lot more. Cameron's decision fits the trend of wealthy Americans pulling their money out of the country and reinvesting it to buy land in the Southern Hemisphere, escaping spiraling tax rates and protecting themselves against the potential for widespread social dislocation. Another interesting sign on the wall. Meanwhile, Washington state lawmakers are the latest to join a chorus of opposition in the bill for indefinite detention, now introducing a bill challenging the authority of the NDAA. Reps Jason Overstreet, Matt Shea, Vincent Bies, Kerry Condota, and David Taylor introduced HB 2759, the Washington State Preservation of Liberty Act, this week. It reads in part that the indisputable threat of terrorism is real and the full force of appropriate constitutional law must be used to defend this threat. However, winning the war against terror cannot come at the great expense of eviscerating the unalienable rights recognized by and protected in the United States Constitution and the Constitution of the State of Washington. Indeed, undermining these constitutional rights only to concede to the terrorist demands of changing the fabric of what has made the U.S. Republic, granting the greatest number of people the greatest amount of liberty, justice, security, opportunity, prosperity, happiness, peace, and good ever known or experienced by humankind throughout the world. And of course, that's all well and good, but I think we do have to get honest about the real terrorist threat. It's so much of the manufactured hype about nonsense. All these cases have fallen through in court if they weren't outright FBI provocateured. All kinds of lies on 9/11 and more. So I want to challenge politicians that while it's great to stand up against the powers of the NDAA, somebody has to come clean and get honest about this whole damn system. Something to keep an eye on there. Meanwhile, the Ron Paul campaign headquarters were attacked in Washington State. We have a short clip of that now.
Candidate Ron Paul's Washington State headquarters were attacked last night. Staff and volunteers were there as someone started throwing rocks. Nobody was hurt, but 2 volunteers felt the glass shatter as objects came through the windows. Police are investigating that.
And that being yet another caucus state where Ron Paul's ground support threatens to capture more delegates in the GOP primary, even as the GOP establishment wants to hurriedly anoint Mitt Romney and keep Gingrich up there as a distraction. Now, there was another case a couple days ago in Florida, just ahead of that vote. Everyone step on his toes. Gingrich security harasses Ron Paul supporter. And it goes on to explain how Dillard, a Ron Paul supporter in his late 20s, showed up with a sign and found himself surrounded by Gingrich's little press corps, where they were doing a stop, and Gingrich's own aides and security personnel started stepping on his toes, tried to intimidate him out of the area, and told everyone basically to get him. And he now has a broken foot or a fractured foot and other injuries and bruises just for holding up a Ron Paul sign in front of his lordship Gingrich. Now the Ron Paul campaign is demanding an apology from Gingrich and even suggesting that Gingrich should pay for the medical bills of Dillard, who does have a fractured foot, according to reports. So just all kinds of nasty attacks on the Ron Paul campaign, even as he supposedly can't win, but he's winning the hearts and minds and trying to change the whole discourse over what it means to elect a puppet president and what direction our country is headed. Meanwhile, the family of slain border agent Brian Terry is now suing over the wrongful death against the federal government. Terry was killed December 14, 2010 by drug cartel bandits in Arizona. They found 2 AK-47s at the scene, later linked to the government's own Fast and Furious gun running operation. Of course, as part of that wrongful death lawsuit, there will be a great amount of disclosure that is at least possible if they don't obscure the investigation. As the family seeks justice, they complain, among other things, that they were lied to in their face shortly after his death by various federal agencies, and that's plenty disgusting. Of course, Kurt Nimmo does the background homework on there too, connecting the CIA's own involvement, according to the Washington Times, the mainstream press, in that larger Fast and Furious case. The agency helped arm the Sinaloa cartel, described in the Washington Times article as the, quote, preferred cartel on the street level near the American border. Of course, Wachovia Bank and others have been caught laundering massive amounts of money for the Sinaloa cartel, all tied in to that small case around Brian Terry, which is part of the larger Fast and Furious scandal. And we'll see how that all turns out. Meanwhile, San Onofre reactor offline for leak as it's investigated. That is near San Diego, an extremely small, NBC LA emphasizes, amount of radiation could have escaped from the San Onofre nuclear generating station near San Diego after a water leak prompted operators to shut down the reactor, according to officials. An extremely small amount of radiation. Where have we heard these lies before? Meanwhile, only days ago, January 30th, Illinois' nuclear reactor loses power, venting steam. In Byron, Illinois, Exelon Nuclear says a reactor at its Byron generating station has been shut down after losing power, and steam is being vented to reduce pressure. However, they say the steam contains low levels of tritium, which is a radioactive isotope of hydrogen, but not at unsafe levels. Everything's safe, they keep reminding you. We heard this all before at Fukushima. For months, they denied anything was happening. Then you saw the head of TEPCO, the Prime Minister of Japan, all weeping on television, sorry that they had lied to their own people and the whole world about the grossly dangerous levels of radiation. Now let's look back to an AP report from 6 or 7 months ago in the summer. June 21st, 2011, in Illinois, right next to the Byron, Illinois nuclear reactor, where they discuss how tritium is being leaked. Tritium, which is a radioactive form of hydrogen, is leaked from at least 48 of 65 sites, according to the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission and their records. Leaks from at least 37 of those facilities contain concentrations exceeding the federal drinking water standard, sometimes at hundreds of times the limit. And then look at the caption over here in the story. You can see it on screen as well as behind me here, that, let's see, more than 6 million gallons of tritium-laden water in repeated leaks dating back to the 1990s exist, but were not publicly reported until 2005. But don't worry, the AP and NBC LA have told you the levels are safe. There's nothing to worry about. just like at Fukushima. So, and we have a worldwide headline on that too, including the leaks in France and other parts of the country here in the U.S. and other parts across the world. It's just going on everywhere. Does it have something to do with Dr. Busby connecting the radiation levels with infertility? I don't know. Time will tell, but will it be too late then? And will officials warn people not to live next to nuclear reactors, or will they keep telling them how safe it is and how it's no big deal? It's basically the same as not living next to a nuclear reactor. Now, the same people who are telling you these kinds of lies about radiation are essentially the same basic regulatory agencies who tell you GMO foods are safe or that aspartame is safe for consumption. And now there's a new false debate. Should the government regulate sugar just like it regulates alcohol and tobacco? Yeah, well, the short answer is no. Obviously, sugar is very dangerous, connected with a number of diseases, a number of bad conditions in our American and worldwide culture, and obviously overconsumption of sugar is a major problem here. But here on the own CBS News report, 68% of people said no, they don't want the government to regulate. 32%, though, are okay with the regulation. So maybe they figure they have some public support to move forward. But the whole idea here is that the FDA approved aspartame, even though countless studies showed it was dangerous. The FDA has streamlined and created new positions in its own agency, bringing on people who worked for Monsanto, including Michael Taylor, to rapidly approve and fast-track the approval of all kinds of GMOs from Monsanto and the other genetically modified producers and get them on the market, always telling you it's safe. Is it? These are the people who are going to regulate sugar? Yeah, we need to eat less sugar. We need to have a whole cultural discussion about that. I've been unhealthy myself. I've tried to make changes, and among those changes are cutting back my sugar exposure, but we can't do it at the federal regulation level. That's only going to cause more problems, probably a black market for sugar. These aren't the kind of solutions we want, and we cannot trust the FDA, who just a few days ago was caught essentially trying to target their own whistleblowers from within the FDA when they were trying to warn about, what was it, a heart device that they believed was unsafe. They spied on and then tried to persecute their own employees when they tried to blow the whistle on the unsafe things being approved at the FDA. Somebody's got to rein in that power. But in other news, Zbigniew Brzezinski, I think more than a year ago, gave a speech at the Montreal, Canada branch of the CFR, warning that a widespread global awakening was taking place. And we're going to play that clip right now, but he has not backed off from that statement.
First time in all of human history, mankind is politically awakened. That's a total new reality. Total new reality. It has not been so for most of human history until the last 100 years. And in the course of the last 100 years, the whole world has become politically awakened. And no matter where you go, politics is a matter of social engagement, and most people know what is generally going on in the world, and are consciously aware of global iniquity.